I highly recommend Ms. Hicks. Her books, her CDs are encouraging.
I bought her book, A Hill to Climb. She's a very inspirational speaker.
And I look forward to one day being able to work with her. Your power lies within you. Let it loose.
And now let's welcome your host of Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, Louise Hicks. In this episode, Renewing of the Black Mind, Self-Awakening, Part 3.
Hello, world. How's everybody today? Thank you all for joining me on this Black History Month that we're still celebrating. And today is part 3 and the final part to Renewing of the Black Mind, Self-Awakening. And thank you all for joining. And we will continue reading the reading of the Willie Lynch letter and the making of a slave. But before we get started with the reading, let me just share, did you know? Did you know that this week I found some interesting information that shows that we as Black people are really going backward instead of forward with our economic power. I saw an interesting piece on one of the, I believe it was one of the mainstream news media, where it said, it was an NBC report. It said Black spending power reaches record 1.6 trillion, but net worth falls. Now, don't you find that astounding that our net worth reaches $1.6 trillion. However, our net worth falls. That's astounding. And it has a lot to do with our spending, how we're spending our money. Black home ownership is down 3% since 2000 as the racial wealth gap widens for Black Americans. Do you realize that as an ethnic group, we have fallen behind all other ethnicities in America in terms of our net worth? And you know why? It's not that we don't have the money. It's because we are not spending our money wisely. And a lot of that has to do with the root cause that we are discussing, this Willie Lynch letter and the making of a slave, because a lot of us are still enslaved. We're enslaved in the mind. We got to change our mindset and how we spend our money. We're not spending our money wisely. We're not allowing our money to circulate within the Black community. That means we're not buying from our Black businesses, and we should be. So what are we going to do about it? We need to do something about our spending. We have this $1.6 trillion running through our hands, yet our net worth has fallen down tremendously. So therefore, we have work to do. And this is why I'm doing this show, because we as Black people must wake up. We have to have a self-renewing of our Black minds, self-awakening. We have to learn self-love. Because if you don't love yourself, how can you love somebody else? Thanks, Barbara, for joining. I appreciate all of you guys for joining the show today, because we have to wake up, Black people. We have to wake up. Now, I just shared this did you know astounding news with you on how we have $1.6 trillion running through the Black community in our Black hands. Yet we have fallen significantly behind in our net worth. So we're going backward, and it's up to us to take ourselves forward. And that can only happen if we are learning the root cause and the why that we are such a divided culture. And it goes back to slavery. And that's why I chose to read this book, The Willie Lynch Letter and the Making of a Slave, because this really gives us the root cause of why generation after generation, we have not come together as a Black culture. We still have that divide. We still have many of us who are so enslaved in the mind until we just don't know what to do with ourselves. And we don't know how to govern ourselves. We aren't training our children. Why do you think they're building more prisons than schools, even though the school system here sucks? Because it's not conducive to our experience as Black people, and we keep falling further and further behind. We don't even do anything about the educational system. We don't even go out and talk to the schools about our children, many of us. And I know that to be a fact. So we got to wake up Black people. So we're going to continue to read this Willie Lynch letter and share the root cause of how we got trapped into the mentality that we're in today, that shows that Willie Lynch, whether Willie Lynch was a fictional character, or whether Willie Lynch is a real character, the Willie Lynches do exist today. And that's evident. And I want to ask you another question. Did you know that just this past month in January, a young Black man that works for FedEx had to run for his life? Fortunately, unlike Aubrey, he survived. He lived to tell his story. Some white men were shooting after him when he's out doing his job through FedEx. And guess what FedEx did? They put him on an unpaid leave after this young man ran for his life and suffered such a traumatic experience. That has to mess with your mind, and it should be messing with all of our minds. And we should be expressing an outrage. And from what I understand, FedEx has reinstated his pay, in which it should have never been taken away. He's out doing his job and he's being chased by some white supremacists who have all of this white privilege in this country. Did you know that? This just happened January 2022. And it was publicized on one of the mainstream media, which sometimes they will publicize an incident like this once, maybe twice, and there's no follow-up. That's why we need Black people to stand up for what is right. And we're not doing it, many of us. And I'm doing this because of the love for my people. And that's not to say that anyone of any ethnicity cannot join this show, because you can. You can get involved as well. If you are a white person and you are about doing the right thing and righteousness, you would stand up for something that is right as well. And stop burying your head in the sand as if these racial atrocities do not exist, because they do. And they exist every day in employment, our neighborhoods, our community, the educational system, the religious system. It's in all walks of our life. That's why we have to become intellectually inspired, emotionally inspired, mentally inspired, spiritually inspired. And until that happens, we are going to continue to lag behind everybody else. We've been in this country longer than any ethnicity, and everybody is passing us up. That's not a coincidence. It's by design. And it has to do with slavery, because many of us have never healed from those atrocities, the rapes, the castrations, and everything that has gone on and still going on. So with that said, I'm going to start the final chapters of this book, The Willie Lynch Letter and the Making of a Slave, because this really gets to the root cause of why we as Black people are in the situation we're in today, because we have not healed. We're divided as an ethnic group by design because of white supremacy, white privilege. So let's read, starting on page 21, the Negro marriage unit. We breed 2 nigger males with 2 nigger females. Then we take the nigger males away from them and keep them moving and working. Say the nigger female bears a nigger female and the other bears a nigger male. Both nigger females being without influence of the nigger male image, frozen with an independent psychology, will raise their offspring into reverse positions. The one with the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent and negotiable. We negotiate with her, through her, by her, herself, independent. I'm going to read this one again because this is important. The one with the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent and negotiable. In parentheses, we negotiate with her, through her, by her, and negotiate her at will. The one with the nigger male offspring, she being frozen with a subconscious fear for his life, will raise him to be mentally dependent and weak, but physically strong. In other words, body over mind. Now, in a few years, when these 2 offspring become fertile for early reproduction, we will mate and breed them and continue the cycle. That is good, sound, and long-range comprehensive planning. Warning, possible interloping negatives. Earlier, we talked about the non-economic good of the horse and the nigger in their wild or natural state. We talked out the principle of breaking and tying them together for orderly production. Furthermore, we talked about paying particular attention to the female savage and her offspring for orderly future planning. Then, more recently, we stated that by reversing the positions of the male and the female savages, we had created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever, unless phenomenon occurred and reshifted the positions of the male and female savages. Our experts warned us about the possibility of the phenomenon occurring, for they say that the mind has a strong drive to correct and recorrect itself over a period of time, if it can touch some substantial original historical base. And they advised us that the best way to deal with this phenomenon is to shave off the brute's mental history and create a multiplicity of phenomenon or illusions, so that each illusion will twirl in its own orbit, something akin to floating balls in a vacuum. This creation of a multiplicity of phenomenon or illusions entails the principles of crossbreeding the nigger and the horse, as we stated above, the purpose of which is to create a diversified division of labor, the results of which is severance of the points of original beginnings for each spherical illusion. Since we feel that the subject matter may get more complicated as we proceed in laying down our economic plan concerning the purpose, reason, and effect of crossbreeding horses and niggers, we shall lay down the following differential terms for future generations. Number one, orbiting cycle means a thing turning in a given pattern. Number two, axis means upon which or around which a body turns. Number three, phenomenon means something beyond ordinary conception and inspires awe and wonder. Number four, multiplicity means a great number. Number five, sphere means a globe. Number six, crossbreeding, a horse means taking a horse and breeding it with an ass, and you get a dumb backward ass. Long-headed mule that is not reproductive nor producing by itself. Crossbreeding niggers means taking so many drops of good white blood and putting them into as many nigger women as possible, varying the drops by various tones that you want, and then letting them breed with each other until the circle of colors appear as you desire. What this means is this: put the niggers and the horse in the breeding pot, mix some asses and some good white blood, and what do you get? You get a multiplicity of colors of ass backwards, unusual niggers running, tied to backwards, and ass long-headed mules, the one productive of itself, the other sterile. In parentheses, the one constant, the other dying. We keep the nigger constant, for we may replace the mule for another tool. Both mule and nigger tied to each other, neither knowing where the other came from, and neither productive for itself nor without each other. Control language. Crossbreeding completed for further severance from the original beginning, we must completely annihilate the mother tongue of both the nigger of the new mule and institute a new language that involves the new life's work of both. You know, language is a peculiar institution. It leads to the heart of a people. The more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of that society. Therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country to the extent that he knows the body of the language, to that extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. For example, you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets. And he is then no more a slave, for you can't fool him any longer. And having a food is one of the basic ingredients of and incidents to the making of the slavery system. And I'm going to stop there because we will finish up today. It's only about 2 paragraphs left, but I want to stop so that we can talk about some of these things that we've read. And the basic of this reading is to break up the family structure. And we have seen that happen over and over and over, the breaking up of the family structure. And that's what they did in slavery. And it continued on into the Jim Crow era, the incarceration era. Why do you think we have all these Black men, women in prison, and they're building more juveniles to put our Black children in? Because it's a breakup. If they can make the Black woman dependent on them and watch out for them in slavery, and this has continued on through today, because we have a lot of Black women that's still in that enslaved mentality, young, middle-aged, old. Many of us, we have not awakened. That's why I decided to do this 3-part series on the awakening of the Black mind, because we must wake up, Black people. We must love ourselves first, then we can love somebody else. And they did this shift so that they could have economic empowerment. And as I just told you at the top of the show, we have gone backward in terms of our economic empowerment. We're at the bottom of all ethnicities now. We're losing ground every day. And we have to wake up spiritually, emotionally, mentally, intellectually, and that's how we get our economic empowerment. Of course, we were promised that 40 acres and a mule. We don't know when that's going to happen, or if it ever will happen. And we have these presidents out here giving reparations to other ethnicities. And when are they going to talk about our reparations for our forefathers fighting for freedom while they were being whipped, brutalized, castrated, raped? And they talk about this in here, how the white man raped our Black women. They're Black slaves, that white supremacy, white privilege that still exists today. So what are we going to do about it? We do have people out here that are working diligently to do something about it, but we have too many of us that have become complacent and apathetic. So that's telling me that either you don't know any better, you're ignorant to the facts of our history, or you don't care. So we have to wake up. We have to care. What are we going to leave our children? Are we going to leave our children some generational wealth, like the whites are leaving their children from the stolen labor that our foreparents worked to build them up economically, and we got nothing in return? Let's wake up. Let's fight for our freedom, our rights. Here I am, 71 years old, will be on March 4th, and I'm out here fighting. And I see too many apathetic young people out here doing nothing but going out spending their money stupidly. Many of them getting high on drugs, many of them having all these babies and not even being responsible or accountable for these children. So we gotta wake up, we gotta teach, each one teach one. So I'm gonna open up the mic because I want you guys to chime in and express your thoughts on what we're talking about today, because this is vital to our livelihood. And I really thank all of you for joining in today, chiming in with this live show. So please, by all means, if you want to say anything, unmute and give us your thoughts on what we've read so far. And what do you think is the solution for us coming together as a people and stop hating on one another? Because that's a major part of our problem, and it's by design. So open up your mics and speak up and speak out.
Oh, I'll make a comment, Louise. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of more concerned about, well, what do we do? What's the answer? And from a spiritual side, I guess I'm more familiar with that. I feel like once you know who you are and what type of power and authority that you have, and you start to use that power and authority, and it starts with thoughts, your way of thinking. If you have a thinking, woes with me and poor me, then that's what you're going to create, a woe with me and poor with me. But once you realize that we have the same makeup, the only difference our color and our thinking. And once we can fix that and realize that you are somebody and that you do have a right to this and that, then you don't settle. So I'm more familiar with the spiritual side. So I guess I would comment that once you can educate yourself that you are empowered, and if you control your thoughts and what you're thinking, you can change your destiny. And I feel like it starts there. So I'm real big on what I give my attention to, because I know how it can affect my thoughts.
You are so right on what you're saying. However, that's why I titled this show Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, because we have to have a spiritual awakening as well. And I agree with you. We have to really change our thought, our mindset. And until we change our mindset, we're going to continue to be on this cultural gap between us as Black people, the great divide. So that's what we have to work on. So I agree with you. And it starts from the home, from infancy, teaching our children, sitting down with our children, sharing with them a lot of these videos that are out here. And I mentioned one, I think on the last show or the show prior, the elementary genocide, the school to prison pipeline. And I shared this. This is a video that we should all have in our library. We should be teaching our children, because the school system is by design to weaken our children so that they can get free labor through the prison system. They're not teaching our children anything about our history in these schools. In fact, here in Texas, they were teaching our children that slavery didn't even exist. And it was in books that they took out of the schools eventually. So we have to wake up. We were not unpaid interns. You don't rape, castrate, and mutilate an intern. I've had interns on my Aim to Purpose, the radio show. And they were treated with dignity, respect. And that's what we have to start demanding. We give these politicians our votes and they do nothing for us. Just recently, we voted in, well, I didn't, but many of us voted in Biden-Harris administration. They created an executive order because of the situation that was happening within the Asian community. And I'm not knocking any other ethnicities, because they stand up and they don't even go out and march for their rights, and they're given. Has President Biden signed an executive order about the killing of all these Black people that these white supremacists are killing? No. In fact, I don't believe any president has signed an executive order specifically identifying Black people with all the killings that's going on with our Black people. And we keep voting for them, and they disrespect us like that. That's a slap in the face. So what are we gonna do? We have to stand up and speak out. We have to speak out on these jobs. Many of us are afraid to speak out. Oh, I'll lose my job. But you lose your job anyway. I've spoken out. I've never been afraid of losing my job, and I've never been fired from a job. Never. And I've spoken out about the racism and the discrimination that I've encountered and endured on the jobs. So that's what we have to do. We have to speak up and speak out and not be afraid. I'm going to lose my job. Start your own business. We have too many of us that are afraid. You're fearful. And you know why? A lot of it has to do with a lack of doing your own due diligence as Black people, because many of us are too busy out here using drugs, running to the liquor store where it's by design. They put all these liquor stores in your community, and you don't even have a decent grocery store. So we got to stop with a capital S-T-O-P and wake up. That's how we find solutions, starting our own businesses. Look at the Black churches. The Black churches have a multitude of money running through these churches But do they get together and create educational institutions, hospitals, grocery stores? And I'm not saying that some of them are not doing something, but how about a collective effort as a Black united front? It seems there is territorial Black churches, territorial. And by that I say, oh, I'm over here, you're over there. So how do we come together to build Black institutions? There's a lot of money out here. I just told you about it. And there's a lot of money going through these Black churches. So what are we going to do as a Black people? Are we going to sit back and say nothing? Are we going to allow these candidates, be it Black or white, I don't care what ethnicity they are, run up in our Black churches and tell us all these lies? And once they lie to you and you vote for them, what do they do for you? Nothing. Because if they did, why would we still be seeking our freedom and out here marching in the street? If we had equal rights, we wouldn't be doing that. So would anybody else like to speak? Because I'm fired up today. Well, I'm fired up every day because this is Black History Month. And like I said, I was born Black history because I was born as a Black woman. So to me, Black history is every day that I live and breathe.
Louise, this is Sandy. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And I think too, once we educate and we get our understanding of what's really going on and what we need to do, we're calling to action. And the action is not when there is just some major situation or event that happens or that occurs that affects us as Black people, like the George Floyd situation. We're called into action every day, and it's even the small things that we do. Once we get a good grip and a good understanding and we're educated and we have that understanding, what are we doing to take the message and the education forward? We have an obligation and a responsibility to move forward every day. And, yes, the politicians come and they want our vote. When they get our vote and they don't deliver on their promises, what takes us so long to get into action to demand some type of, hey, payback for that? You asked us, you committed, we committed to you. Where's the commitment to us? So it's not a one-time event. It's an everyday movement. And it's what we fail to realize too, is just, we have to make a conscious effort every day to do something towards that cause. And I think we put it on the back burner until something, we as a people, it feels like we put it on the back burner until something comes up that moves it to the forefront. And we can no longer do that. We have to educate our family, our friends, friends, and it's just the way that we go about it. I mean, it's like we're starting all over. It's a grassroots effort, but we cannot stop, and we just have to continue and realizing every day that we wake up and breathe that we have we have an obligation, and the obligation is to ourselves. And then we'll make that obligation to ourselves. We're making a commitment to the future. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, let me chime in, Sandy. This is Melba. All of this is what we're saying is good, and I've been hearing it, but I'm still struggling with how to implement. And so when you say obligated to ourselves, I mean, how do we do this? I mean, when Louise said, you made a comment about starting our own jobs, we're afraid to speak out because we're going to get fired. And she said, start your own business. That kind of touched me right there for a minute. And let me tell you why, because I've always wanted my own business, but I just couldn't seem to move forward. But I had this maybe about a year ago, and this is just something simple. I hate terrible customer service. Make a long story short, I go into Winco. It looked like it's Christmas. Only 2 people on the register, and we're all sitting there almost begging, here, take my money so I can, buy this and that. So I decided to ask for the manager. I go ask for the manager. And he, where did you go, Louise?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right. I go ask for the manager. So he tells me, well, ma'am, people don't come to work and blah, blah, this, make an excuse. But what got me, I'm hearing these guys in the back laughing. They're not in the back, but they're down the lines. They're supposed to be stocking groceries or whatever. And my thing is, somebody needs to get on these registers. Forget the groceries. Let's get these registers. So I go and tell him. And so he tells me it's not enough people. Well, anyway, make a long story short, I get on the phone. I call the headquarters while I'm in the store, and I'm trying to encourage everybody else to do it. Well, anyway, somebody must have told him. He comes grab me. He found a girl somewhere, put her on the register. Ma'am, come on, you come on. Put me right there in the front. So she says to me, she said, they're supposed to do that anyway. She said, when we have lines like this, it's all hands on deck. Stop what you're doing, take care of the customers. So anyway, Winco calls me back, and they asked, I had to tell them where the location was, everything. And I go back that next week, they got 12 registered. Every register was filled but 2. And so that was too many, but they figured it out. They need more than 2, but they didn't need all 12. And so I got to thinking about that. I found myself, I go to QT, I do the same thing. So I said to myself, I need to start a business. I need to start a secret shopping in my neighborhood. Demand customer service. And I feel like it will encourage their business. They'll make more money when you got better service. And so that's a business for somebody in your neighborhood. Demand some service in there. Just go. I said, I'm going to call and talk to Winco. I'll call and talk to Burger King, wherever I go for service, and say, look, I got service. I got skills here. I know what I like. I would like to be a secret shopper. I feel like it would be good for me because I get the service I want. And it'd be good for you because you are now generating more money in your store simply because of the service. So, things like that. I'm just saying how we can talk this, but I need how do you implement this stuff? How do we change? I don't like when I hear we're dropping to the end of the line out of all of these other groups. I don't like that.
But Melba, you just did.
You
just did it. You did it.
Yeah.
Right.
And now, but listen to me, you did it. You not only did it, but you also went so far as you did it, and people recognize the people at that store, those workers saw you take a stand, recognize a problem, demand what you should be entitled to receive. Now, where you go from here with that, that's on your shoulders and those that can help you. Okay.
Yeah.
But see, it's we sometimes we're so busy looking at what's not. We also got to look back at, even if we move forward a crumb, we move forward a crumb. You don't know how many people you impacted that day.
Yeah.
But if you had not done anything or said anything, then where would we be? So that's how we got to look at it. And I'm not saying that we have a long way to go, but we should not be afraid to recognize when we're moving in the right direction either.
Yeah.
We got to ask ourselves, are we moving in the right direction? And I say in that situation, with that set of circumstances, we were moving in the right direction, and you did the right thing. And I think you showed a lot of young people there, hey, this is how you speak up and how you handle yourself, and this is how it's done. And then they have been able to see the results behind that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what you normally find, everybody complaining, now it's a big roar and everybody fussing and cussing. And but I just said, I'm going to call the corporate office. And when I got that response, I said, oh my goodness. I said, that's why we get the service, because we fuss with the manager and the clerk, whereas other communities, they get on the phone and call corporate office, because I realize they don't know what's going on in my neighborhood if I don't call and tell them. But I tell you, Sandy and Louise, I went and did the same thing at a QT. I'm used to go. That's why I like QT. When they go in there, those clerks are working 2 lines. Come on, ma'am, I'll get you over here. And then they'll say, see you later, like we buddies or something. I love it. Go in my community, you got this one clerk, they trying to take one person at a time. guess what I did? I called them, and I got a sister on the line. She said, you know what, you're absolutely right. She said, that's our logo, or that's our market. We see you later, like we buddies. And she said, and we want them while you sitting there getting your money out. On the other side, I'm helping this person. But when I did it in my community, it wasn't happening. All I did was call, and I got a response. And I said, wow. So I realized, don't argue and fight and cuss the people out. Get on the corporate office, because they don't know that's happening until we tell them. So like you said, Sandy, that's it. So I just say that to everybody on here. When you go in and you don't get good customer service, call the corporate office, give the address, and this is what I found. And they have thanked me for that. I did it to Krispy Kreme. They offered me to be a part of some type of, I don't know, they have a little group, something meeting or something. They asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And I was like, wow. I mean, that's all I had to do was just call corporate office. So we can do that, because I like good service, especially if I'm bringing my money in there, and I expect your store to be clean, not nasty and dirty. I'll call on you about that too. But my key was, I should be able to make that a business for myself. I should be a secret shopper.
Melba,
We,
my name is,
you are?
sorry, my name is Robin. Melba, you know what?
Oh, okay.
You made that phone call to that corporate office. You never know. You just might get a phone call to be that secret shopper or secret what you did. Because I've been in line too, and it'd be a long line. I'll be like, look, y'all need some help. Okay. You know, I'll be like, y'all need some help up here. All these people over here, you only got one person. I do the same thing, but anyway, you never know. Somebody saw that, and you just might get that phone call sooner than you think. And I hope,
But you know what? Let me give you another way of thinking about it is, you may definitely get that phone call. You don't have to sit around and wait for it, because if this is something you think you can, that you are passionate about, get out there and make it happen. But in terms of our commitment to our people and our commitment to things being done the right way, hey, why not get a group of people together, a group of our people, and say, look, let's start our own secret shopping association. Okay. Because we want excellence in the community that we, that serves us and that we're a part of.
Yes.
And then, why not do it that way? Because we're striving for excellence. We're striving for education. We're striving to forge forward with change.
Yes.
So why wait for somebody else to own that when we know what it needs to look like and how it needs to be done? We just need somebody to say, hey, let's do it.
Hey,
great
let's
idea.
do it. Hey, Sandy, let's do that. Let's meet. I think, we ought to do that and demand our service. And
exactly.
Well, that's what you have to do. That's how we do it.
So what you're saying, instead of waiting on them, we do it ourselves. We go in and then we call corporate office and we tell them this is what we found and this is what we want and blah, blah, blah. My thing was, though, how do you make that a business? How can we make that where you get paid to do that? Because they do have secret shoppers, but they may not have them in my neighborhood.
Yeah,
that was my concern.
That's where you have to come together. I'll let Sandy address this, and she brought that up.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think what we would have to do, the first thing I would do is just find out a little bit more about the secret shopper services that they have now. And then once we have that intelligence, then I would, just kind of study that a little bit and then just bring it forward to them and just tell them, look, this is what differentiates us from them. This is what we can do. And let's face it, at the end of the day, with big business, they want to know what's in it for them, and we know what's in it for us. We just got to present it that way.
That's right.
And
but I'm looking at it from two fronts here. How do we make it a business for us? But then I'm also looking at how do we, change with exactly what, the focus of this meeting was today. How do we really forge forward with that change? it'd be nice if you get a paycheck while you're doing it, but I'm not all about the paycheck either.
Right.
It's about
Not
what our
either.
responsibility is. And the
Mhm.
thing of it is that really struck me, Melba, was, was what you've learned and what standing up for what's right, what should
Right.
be done and how it should be done. But I'm also just thinking that how many people did you touch in the process?
Yeah.
Exactly.
How many people and how did you touch those people?
Right.
We as Black people, oftentimes we walk into an establishment and just, we feel like we're treated as second-class citizens. Think about if we walked into any establishment time after time and we felt like we were the only ones that mattered.
Mm.
What would that do for our people as a whole?
I like that. I
Right.
like that.
So I think we got to kind of look at, all of that as well. And then, the other thing that I just wanted to add that when, Louise was speaking and you all were talking, and, and then I'm just going to call it my call for action, educating myself, educating my family, but taking a responsibility to reach out to those that I know that need the education and that may not be receiving it. What can I do to enlighten, to open their eyes, and to really, help them? We cannot move away from those things either and those opportunities.
Yeah.
I think about some years ago, I was on the train in Washington, D.C., and there were a group of young Black kids that got on the train. And boy, they were cursing and they were just acting a complete, what. And the friend that I was with, I said, look, if you don't mind, I'm getting ready to say something. I'm getting ready to do something because this is getting on my nerves. So, just be prepared. I guess you got my back here, right? So I just start talking to them. And I just call them over and then, we just talking, how y'all doing, blah, 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 where you going? And then I just mentioned to them, I said, when y'all got on the train, just, your voices were so loud, but the profanity that y'all were using. And I just talked to them about it. And I said, if you can think about that and think about how it looks and what kind of young man and young woman you really, want to be and how you want to be portrayed and remembered. And so, we just started having that dialogue. Well, I was out of Washington, D.C. a few days later, but my friend takes that train all the time. And he said, he was approached. Those same kids got on a train and asked, where's your friend? Where's that lady?
Wow.
And they remembered me, but and said she was so nice. And, I don't know if they're still doing what they're doing, but I gave them something else to think about.
I love it.
And we got to start just planting the seeds too.
Yeah.
We do.
And Karen, and not be afraid to say something.
Right.
Let me just say this real quick because I know the time is running out.
Yeah, we're getting close to time. So go ahead.
I was afraid. Let me tell you, because I did the same thing. I'm in Dallas, exact same thing. Lovely ride from North Dallas to downtown. Got on downtown, got on the one coming to my hood. Same thing. I was afraid of them. Didn't say nothing. I was scared. They was loud cursing. Young girls were the worst. Us. I just had to say that. So I admire you for that.
And that happens. Sometimes we are afraid, and sometimes we have reason to be afraid because we know we have this Black on Black crime, and you don't never know what this person may do or these people. So sometimes it does pay. You have to use your discernment and your discretion.
You definitely do. Yes.
And I thank you all for chiming in and speaking up, speaking out, because this is how we find solutions. And anybody that knows me know that I don't back down from challenges. I will write to whomever that I need to write to. I have no issues with it. And I will tell them what I think. So that's why we have to learn to articulate ourselves. We have to learn to do our due diligence so we don't have to be afraid. And when you do that, everything, sometimes you may win, sometimes you may not. However, you have let that person know that I'm not afraid to speak up and speak out for justice and what is right. And that's what we have to do. And you guys have made some very valuable comments and assessments, because this stuff stemmed from slavery. That's the root cause of it. If somebody is beating you to death, and it still happens, it just happened here in the 20th century. I can't remember, I think the person's last name was Bird, down in Jasper, Texas, where these white supremacists dragged this man to death. And so this is not anything that we're talking about that just happened in slavery. It's still happening. Like I mentioned about the FedEx guy in Jackson, Mississippi, that had to run for his life just last month, January 2022, from some white supremacists.
Wow.
So this is nothing new. And FedEx put him on an unpaid leave, which was a disgrace, and then decided to put him on a paid leave after an outrage. And that's what we got to do. We got to become outraged. So let me finish reading this final couple of paragraphs, and we will close out for today. And next week, I believe, is the end of the month. And you guys be sure and go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to my channel. I put a challenge out on Facebook and ask everybody to go to my YouTube channel, subscribe. Aim to Purpose Radio is on Facebook. And give a thumbs up, because this is something that we need to do. We must address these issues. So let me just read the final chapter, well, the final couple of paragraphs, and we'll be done with the book. And then next week, what we're gonna do, we're just gonna talk about, since I think this is the last week, is that correct? Last week, next Sunday in the month, I think. Can somebody let me know? And if that be the case, we're just gonna have a show on what we think and give some solutions and just talk about Black history per se. So let me finish reading here. I'll start at what I've already read. I'll just go to the top of it. It says, therefore, and this is talking about the controlled language, how they changed our language and confused everybody on how we could communicate with each other, and didn't want you to learn how to read and write, because if you couldn't communicate, of course, what can you do? So it says, therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country to the extent that he knows the body of the language, to that extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. For example, you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets, and he is then no more a slave. For you can't fool him any longer, and having a fool is one of the basic ingredients of and incidents to making of the slavery system. For example, if you told a slave that he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops. And the slavery system would break down, for he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So you have to be careful in setting up new language, for the slave would soon be in your house, talking to you as man to man. And that is death to our economic system. In addition, the definition of words or terms are only a minute part of the process. Values are created and transported by communication through the body of the language. A total society has many interconnected value systems. All these values in the society have bridges of language to connect them for orderly working in the society. But for these language bridges, these many value systems would sharply clash and cause internal strife or civil war. The degree of conflict being determined by the magnitude of the issues or relative opposing strength in whatever form. For example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train him to live there and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep the hog pen clean or partially clean, or he might not worry you at all. On the other hand, if you put the same slave in the same hog pen and make a slip and incorporate them for something in his language whereby he comes to value a house more than he does the hog pen, you got a problem. He will soon be in your house. Now, this is the ending of the Willie Lynch letter and the making of a slave. And with this final reading, what they're telling us from my perspective is the hog pen to me goes back to something what Maya Angelou said. When you know better, we should do better. Mm-hmm. So if you know a hog pen from a house, you should know better. And that's what they attempted to do. And they're still doing it by design, is keeping us enslaved by committing these atrocities that they're still committing, such as the George Floyd, the Aubrey Mabry, and this young man, I don't recall his name, that is a FedEx driver in Jackson, Mississippi, when these white supremacists just chased him. And fortunately, God allowed this young man to escape and have an opportunity to tell his story. And this just happened January 2022. It's not something that happened back in slavery when the slaves were running for their lives. So we have to wake up and realize what we have to do, like all of you guys have spoken and said. And Chastity, I see your hand, so go ahead and speak.
Yeah, just to chime in before we end, the Willie Lynch letter is a very powerful book, and it has been said that, and like you say, it's 2022 and we still see a lot of this going on. In my opinion, it's kind of like Marcus Garvey say, of people that have no knowledge of the roots or their history. How can we expect to move forward? We lack spirituality and we lack culture as a people. We're the only race of people that lacks those things, you know, like you were saying earlier about the Black dollar. All the other ethnicities, they know how to stick together. But every dollar that we get, it can't rotate around the Black community. Number one, we have Black businesses, but we don't have a lot of Black businesses. But like in the Asian community, I think it say I can't remember the number, but it rotates so many times around the Asian community before it go out. Soon as Black people get a dollar, it's already out of our community. It doesn't rotate. So we have hundreds of years of trauma that we have to continue to unfold, and it's nothing that happens overnight. But it definitely starts in the mind for everybody. So that's why the earlier you can get us to instill in us how great we are, how powerful we are, the better, because it does take a village, you know. So we have this generation of children, and not all children, but a huge generation of children, to where you look and you say, dang, when did the village stop doing what the village is supposed to do? Because it's like now you can't say anything to anybody's children like you could when I was coming up, per se. In reference to Willie Lynch and how he say how to keep, you know, the makings of a slave, I have to go back to Carter G. Woodson. He has a book, and it's a very powerful book as well, and it's called The Miseducation of the Negro. And in the book, he says, if you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. When you determine that a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. If you make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you make a man think that he is justly an outcast, You do not have to order him to the back door. He will go without being told. And if there is no back door, his very nature will demand one. That goes right back to the Willie Lynch letter, because we've been instilled that we are inferior people. We just are supposed to look, we are just supposed to accept the fact that, everybody else look down on us. Even and I have to say this because you all know what I mean when I say it. You have Caucasian people that are considered poor white trash. Now they know that they're elite or rich or whatever kind of counterparts white people don't really care for them, but they have still instilled in them that they are better than a Negro.
Yes.
So it's a lot, but everything definitely, in my opinion, starts with spirituality. It starts with culture, and it has to be a mental shift for everybody. And that's just what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Chastity, for that, because you are so right. And we have to learn to stand together as a united people. And we're going to have to solve our own problem, because nobody cares about us but us. And until we come together as a united people, working together, and that means all aspects of our lives, and we have to demand something from these politicians, these church leaders, when we go and give all of our money and our votes, and we don't demand anything. And who do you see wealthy and gaining wealth? As I just shared with you, $1.6 trillion running through our Black hands, yet our net worth has fallen behind. Home ownership is down 3% since 2000. That's sad. We have to wake up, renewing of our Black minds, and come together and start building institutions, educational institutions. We need to build up our neighborhoods, get these liquor stores. You don't go to white neighborhoods and find more liquor stores than you find grocery stores where you can buy decent food. You're not going to see it there. You're not going to see a rundown community like we see in our neighborhoods, rundown communities. It's the mindset again, how we have, our minds have been enslaved generation after generation after generation. And it's time we put a stop to it. And like I said, there are people out there teaching. Dr. Claude Anderson, I always mention, this man is in his 80s, I believe. He's been teaching about this for decades after decades. And you will take some Black people who will flock and pay lots of money to go to some of these entertainers, concerts, and so forth. And they can go to, when Dr. Claude Anderson was speaking, for practically a fraction of what they would pay. But guess what? They won't go.
Right.
And that's pathetic. So it's up to us to change our mindset and do something to help us to elevate ourselves and stop giving our money to people that don't care about us. Other ethnicities are coming together. They've surpassed us. I just told you that. They've surpassed us in all aspects because they stand together and we don't. We don't. And here's a statistic here. This was on Black spending power up, racial network down 14%. This was on CNBC just recently when it talks about US net worth, 2001 to today. The Black net worth went from 28K to 24K, down 14%. All the other ethnicities that they have labeled here have gone up, and some significantly. And we know that white privilege, white supremacy had a head start because they threw the Black slaves out there with nothing. And they built Black Wall Street in the 1920s, and white supremacists burned it down with the government's help. Black Wall Street, Oklahoma, And some people don't even know that to this day that that happened, because we don't do our due diligence. We don't do our research. We don't check what's going on with us, because some of us have become too complacent. And we talk about, we'll pass on videos about Becky and Karen, but what videos are you passing on about elevating yourself? If it's something funny that Becky and Karen did, you can bet you're going to see it, because we're going to pass that on. So why don't we pass on videos like this to our people so that they can have an understanding? Something like I spoke with you about the elementary genocide by Raheem Shabazz, the Black Labor White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson, the Hidden Colors by, can't think of his name right now. Somebody know the name of the Hidden Colors? I have it.
Tariq Nasheed or something.
That's it, Tariq Nasheed. Yes, Hidden Colors. Thank you. Was that Chastity? These are the things that we should be buying for our kids, so that our kids can learn our history and know the why and the root cause of why we have such a divided culture, and the black on black crime. We got to stop it. We got enough killing from the white supremacists. So why are we killing each other? Let's stop that, because we've suffered more atrocities than any ethnic group in this country.
Absolutely.
And that's a fact. So with that said, I'm going to share one more book, because I love sharing books. This book, Just Mercy, by Brian Stevenson. I don't know whether anybody has read it. He was on 60 Minutes. This is a Black attorney who has started an organization to help innocent Black men get out of prison. And it's in the South where I believe he lives, but I'm not sure. But he was on 60 Minutes. I bought the book. And we need to start reading about some of the things that we are doing, because there are people out here that's doing things. And the grassroots, like you said, we have to start in our communities. So let's get started on that secret shopper that you spoke about, Melba. Are you going to spearhead that and take it on and find out?
Yeah, I think I will.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
Because we are here to help each other. That's what we should be all about. So let us know how we can help. You're here in Texas. I have people on here from California, Louisiana. And as this movement grow, we're going to win.
Amen.
Amen.
We are going to win. So with that said,
Louise, just real quick, Just Mercy.
Uh-huh.
I just saw Just Mercy. It's in video. So if you don't like reading, watch the movie. It's in a movie now.
Oh, I was going to mention that. Thank you. And Jamie Foxx, if I'm not mistaken, starred in the movie. Is that correct? I think Jamie Foxx starred in the movie.
Was it Jamie? Dang, I can't remember. But yeah, it's in a movie.
Jamie Foxx. I'm not sure, but I think
you're right,
because I saw the movie.
Yeah.
And I was the title of it Just Mercy? I can't remember.
Yes.
It was one story that stood out so much until a movie was made about it. But this man, Brian Stevenson, has helped many Black people come out of the prison complex. And they're still doing this. He has an initiative where they are fighting for Black people to come out of this situation where they will throw us in prison just because you're Black. You don't have to be proven innocent. You can be Black and they'll throw you, oh, you look like so-and-so, so let's go. Like when the young Black man from FedEx, and I'll tell you this, he went to the police station in Jackson, Mississippi. This is January 2022. He said they didn't even take him serious. Young Black man just chased out, running for his life, FedEx working on his job. And they didn't even take him serious at the police department.
So sounds like a lawsuit.
And it should be. I'm so glad this man spoke up, and FedEx did not even help him initially, put him on an unpaid leave like he had done something wrong, and he's out there working for them and had to run for his life. And we need to start calling these people out when they do this. And these two white men took it upon themselves because of white privilege. Oh, we got to chase this nigga out of here. He has no business in here, like they did Arbery. So at any rate, we're going to close the show out for today. And thank you all for coming in, sharing. I have a couple of comments, it looks like, in the chat. Barbara, thank you. Ms. Hicks and others. This was great information. Thank you, Barbara. From my granddaughter, Nija, which I call Sweet Sweet. She says, great session, Grandma Louise. Thank you, Sweet Sweet. I appreciate you coming in, listening to Grandma's show, because we need young people like you to learn our history. It's important. We all should learn from each other. And like I said, this show is primarily about helping our people, Black people, to elevate. However, anyone is welcome to come into the show and get involved, because that's how we create a harmonious environment for everyone, when equality is given to everyone. And that's a fact as well. So go to my YouTube channel, Aim to Purpose Radio, subscribe, hit the thumbs up. This video will be on YouTube. Share it with your friends, your family. Tell them to listen to it, because we need everyone to get involved. And I'm looking forward to next week, because we finished the book. Next week, come back. We're going to discuss we'll discuss some more Black history. I believe it's the end of the month, February 27th. Yeah, that's the last Sunday of the month. So we will finalize and wrap up. And then March, we're going to start with some Black businesses. I'm planning on getting an educator in from Pennsylvania. We're going to have some Black businesses in. I have a Black woman that's going to be talking about, she's here locally in Texas. She's going to be talking about insurance and how to invest, because we need all this. We have to start investing. So with that said, thanks again to everybody that's in here. I appreciate you all. Thank you all for chiming in, giving us your perspective on what we can do to elevate our show. And again, this is part 3 of Renewing of the Black Mind, Self-Awakening, and the last of our series of the reading of the Willie Lynch letter and the making of a slave. So you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Much love to all of you, and just stay blessed and stay safe until next week. This is Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. And as I always depart on my shows, your power lies within you. Let it loose.
Amen. All right. Y'all have a good week.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome, and thank you. Bye-bye.